Tillis.
I have to start, Mr. Epstein. That's a first for me. Thank you so much.
So I was actually researching I was looking into what had happened with the tariffs. And it brought up that crazy language, because I do agree with Senator Warren on one thing. I think the tariffs are making this problem much worse.
If it's any consolation, I was in the middle of a serious meeting when I was abroad last week, and for some reason a theme song from Wicked came up on my phone, and it was very embarrassing because I didn't even know it was until somebody told me what it was. But anyway, back to the matter at hand. From North Carolina, we get hurricanes now in the east and the west. We had the Helene impact, was near Category 1 hurricane that has killed 106 people, 151,000 homes damaged, 500,000 small businesses in disaster-declared counties, 5,000 miles of roads, including a 20-mile segment of I-40, which is still not up and running. We know storms. I heard you all talking about mitigation. We talk about that for the last 10 years that I've been here and for the 8 years that I was in the legislature. We always talk about it and just around a storm, and then we forget about it and do nothing. The president was roundly criticized for saying that there should be conditions attached to FEMA aid. I disagree, incidentally, with the president if he meant individual assistance. You got to give people food, shelter. There can't be conditions for that. You move it out the door. They shouldn't suffer the consequences of bad policy decisions. However, Mr. Gordon made a great point. I am perfectly satisfied with the notion of having conditions attached to any resiliency and recovery to states and local jurisdictions that fail to make their communities and their land more resilient and more able to respond. So I think that it would be great. I've mentioned, I did not know specifically, Mr. Gordon, what you said. I think it's perfectly fine to say that we come up with some sort of way to index state and local governments based on the extent to which they've really implemented best practices for forestry management, for tributary clearing within environmental norms, whatever a best practice looks like. Depoliticize it. And if you're in a jurisdiction that hasn't not only passed the law but implemented the rules, and we're in a world of scarce resources, then the state and local governments that actually are listening and executing and implementing all of these words that we talk about every time a storm comes through, I think they should get first right. We're in a world of scarce resources. I believe that there should be a point where if a state or local government no longer has demonstrated law, procedures, and money to prepare for resiliency and mitigation, they shouldn't get a dime of federal dollars. Give it to the jurisdictions that do. What's wrong with that concept, Mr. Gordon?
Senator, I think you're making an incredibly important point, and there's extremely effective mitigation, cost-effective mitigation that can be done that just isn't happening out there, and certainly it's a burden on the federal taxpayers to keep providing post-disaster funds for things that could have been mitigated. But it really is a bipartisan issue. We can work together to improve that mitigation, and it's so important. The most cost-effective time to do that is either new buildings or rebuilding, and so it's so important to build back better when you have disasters.
Except for the build back better part. I got everything else, but Mr. Newman.
I've got 2 words for you, Senator: building codes.
Yeah.
It is basic low-hanging fruit. We know that building codes work. The Florida Building Code, we believe, prevented about $1 to $3 billion from additional losses associated with Hurricane Ian in Florida. And to the point that Commissioner Pyska made, Altadena will not be rebuilt using California's wildfire codes unless there is action taken by Los Angeles County. That can't be the case. We need to apply the tools we know work to both new construction and rebuilds.
I absolutely, I know we're talking more about insurance strategies. I'll put some questions for the record. But, folks, we've got to stop talking about resiliency, and then you go home, you get political pushback, you don't do it. People are dying. Businesses are being lost. I can take a look at a lot of the communities in North Carolina that were impacted by nearly $50 billion in damage from Helene, and probably attribute some of them for past mistakes and not moving forward on mitigation. And I'll leave you with this. It was in one of the small towns where I had a former mayor who was been in the town for a long time said, These buildings here, I own them all, and I got really mad when the town council made me elevate those two buildings back there that are about 12 foot higher than they were before. Now they're the only ones standing. We need local and state officials to have the courage to tell their communities what they need to do to be more resilient, and the federal government needs to reward those who will and deny funding for those who don't. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Senator Smith.